After a tragic accident leaves billionaire Elijah Carter in a coma, his son Noah is left without a guardian until Camille Robinson, Elijah's childhood love, steps in. But as Elijah wakes, old feelings stir and a ruthless rival threatens. Everything? Can love rewrite their past? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun peeked through the blinds of Elijah Carter's penthouse office as he reviewed the final contracts for his company's biggest merger yet. At 42, he had built Carter Enterprises from nothing into a real estate empire worth millions. His assistant knocked on the door, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Carter, your son's school called again. Noah wasn't picked up." Elijah sighed and checked his watch. It was already 4:30 p.m. "Tell Mrs. Jenkins to get him. I'll be home by 7. "Sir, Mrs. Jenkins quit yesterday. She said you didn't come home until midnight 3 days in a row and she couldn't keep extending her hours." Elijah rubbed his temples. This was the third nanny to quit in 2 months. Since his wife Diana's death from cancer last year, keeping help had been nearly impossible. Noah was only 6, and the boy needed stability, but Elijah's work consumed everything. "Fine, have my driver pick him up and take him home. I'll reschedule my evening meeting." As his assistant left, Elijah stared at the family photo on his desk. Himself, Diana, and Noah at the beach last summer. Diana's smile still made his heart ache with guilt. She had begged him to spend more time with them, but he was always chasing the next deal. Now she was gone, and he was failing their son too. The phone rang again. It was his lawyer. "Elijah, the Watson deal is going south. We need you at the office now, or we'll lose everything we've worked for this year." Elijah looked at the photo again. "I'll be right there. Just let me make a call first." 30 minutes later, Elijah sped down the coastal highway in his silver Mercedes. Rain pounded against the windshield as he tried calling Noah's school again. If the principal would just keep Noah in the office for another hour, he could still save the Watson deal and pick up his son afterward. The call connected, but Elijah never got to speak. A truck ahead hydroplaned, jackknifing across both lanes. Elijah swerved hard, but the wet pavement gave no traction. The world spun in terrifying slow motion as his car smashed through the guardrail and rolled down the embankment. Then darkness. The steady beep of hospital machines filled room 312 at Memorial Hospital. Dr. Wilson adjusted Elijah's IV while speaking to the stone-faced woman from Child Protective Services. "Mr. Carter has suffered severe head trauma. He's stable but completely unresponsive. We can't predict when or if he'll wake up," Dr. Wilson explained. "And the boy has no other family?" Ms. Blackwell asked, reviewing her file. "None that we've found. His mother died last year and Mr. Carter was an only child. His parents are deceased. Then we have no choice but to place Noah in temporary foster care until other arrangements can be made or his father recovers." Outside in the hallway, Noah sat alone, his small shoulders hunched, his dinosaur backpack clutched tightly against his chest. His blonde hair fell across tear-stained cheeks as he stared at his sneakers. "I want my daddy," he whispered to no one. 300 miles away in the small town of Pine Grove, Camille Robinson dismissed her third-grade class for the day. At 40, she still had the same warm smile and kind eyes that made children instinctively trust her. 20 years of teaching hadn't dimmed her enthusiasm, even if life hadn't turned out quite as she'd planned. As she erased the chalkboard, Principal Stevens appeared at her door. "Camille, do you have a minute? There's something on the news I think you should see." In the teacher's lounge, several staff members watched the small television. A reporter stood outside a hospital. "Billionaire real estate developer Elijah Carter remains in critical condition following yesterday's crash. Sources say his young son has no family to care for him, while his father remains in a coma." Camille felt the blood drain from her face. Elijah, her Elijah, the boy she'd grown up next door to in Pine Grove, the first boy she'd ever loved, the man who had promised forever but left for college and never looked back. "Isn't that your Elijah?" Principal Stevens asked quietly. "The one from the photos in your apartment?" Camille nodded, unable to speak. 20 years had passed since she'd seen him last, but every memory came flooding back. The summer nights by the creek, the promises, their plans to leave Pine Grove together. And then his letter saying he'd found new opportunities, new friends, a different path that didn't include her. That night, Camille couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, thinking about Elijah lying unconscious and his little boy with no one to care for him. By morning, she had made her decision. "I need some personal leave time," she told Principal Stevens the next day. "It's important." The social worker's office was cold and impersonal. Ms. Blackwell studied Camille with suspicious eyes. "You claim to know Mr. Carter, but you're not a relative, and your name doesn't appear in any of his documents." "We grew up together in Pine Grove," Camille explained. "We were very close once. I know it sounds strange, but when I heard about his accident and his son, I felt I needed to help." "Ms. Robinson, there are procedures for these situations. Noah is currently with a foster family who specializes in temporary placements. Please, just let me see him. If he doesn't feel comfortable with me, I'll understand. But that little boy needs someone who cares about him, not just another case number." Something in Camille's sincerity must have reached through Ms. Blackwell's professional armor. After a long pause, she nodded. "I'll arrange a meeting. But I'm warning you, don't make promises to this child unless you plan to keep them. He's already lost too much." 2 days later, Camille sat in a visiting room at the Children's Center. When the door opened, a small boy with Elijah's eyes walked in, clutching the hand of a caregiver. "Noah," the woman said gently, "this is Ms. Robinson. She knew your daddy when they were kids." Noah looked at Camille with wary eyes. "Do you know when my daddy is coming back?" Camille felt her heart breaking for this little boy. She knelt to his level. "Not yet, sweetheart, but your daddy is very strong, and the doctors are doing everything they can to help him get better. Mrs. Miller says I have to stay with strangers until Daddy wakes up." His voice quavered. "Would I be a stranger too?" Camille asked softly. Noah considered this, his small face serious. "Did you and my daddy play together when you were little like me?" Camille smiled. "We did. We used to catch frogs by a creek near our houses. Your daddy was always the fastest runner in town." For the first time, Noah's face lit up with interest. "My daddy runs fast? He's always driving his car or in his office." "Oh yes, he could run like the wind, and he built the best tree forts you've ever seen." Noah took a step closer. "I never had a tree fort." Over the next hour, Camille shared simple, child-friendly stories about Elijah as a boy. With each story, Noah moved closer until eventually he was sitting beside her, showing her his dinosaur drawings. When it was time to go, Noah looked up at her with pleading eyes. "Will you come back tomorrow?" "I'd like to, if that's okay with you." Noah nodded solemnly. "And can you visit my daddy too? Maybe if you talk to him, he'll wake up faster." Ms. Blackwell, who had been observing from the corner, saw the connection forming between them. After Noah left, she approached Camille. "It normally takes weeks of paperwork and background checks for temporary guardianship, but given the circumstances, I might be able to expedite things. If you're serious about this commitment." "I am," Camille said without hesitation. Memorial Hospital was bustling with activity when Camille stepped out of the elevator onto the 5th floor. Following the nurse's directions, she found room 312 and paused at the doorway, her heart pounding. 20 years fell away in an instant when she saw him. Despite the tubes and monitors, Elijah was still handsome, his strong jaw now covered with a beard, his thick dark hair flecked with silver at the temples. He looked both familiar and like a stranger. "You can talk to him," the nurse said, checking his vitals. "Some coma patients can hear even when they can't respond." When the nurse left, Camille slowly approached the bed. She reached out, tentatively, her fingers hovering over his hand before gently touching it. "Hello, Elijah," she whispered. "It's Camille Robinson. I know it's been a long time." The only response was the steady beeping of the heart monitor. "I met Noah today. He's beautiful, Elijah. He has your eyes and Diana's smile." She had seen photos of his late wife in news articles. "He's scared and misses you so much." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't know if this is right, but I've applied for temporary guardianship. Just until you wake up. I promise I'll take good care of him." As she spoke, memories washed over her. Their first kiss under the old oak tree, the promises they'd made, the future they'd planned. Then the painful years that followed, watching from afar as he married Diana, built his empire and created a life that had no place for a small-town teacher from Pine Grove. "I never stopped caring about you, you know," she whispered. Even after all this time, on the bed, Elijah remained motionless. But somewhere in the darkness of his mind, something stirred at the sound of a voice he hadn't heard in 20 years, but had never truly forgotten. 3 weeks later, Camille's apartment had been transformed. The spare bedroom now held a child's bed with dinosaur sheets. Drawings covered the refrigerator, and toy cars littered the living room floor. "And then we planted seeds in cups at school," Noah chatted, as he helped Camille set the table for dinner. "Teacher says they'll grow into flowers if we take care of them." "That sounds wonderful," Camille smiled. "Maybe we could plant some in the community garden this weekend." The transition hadn't been easy. Noah had nightmares about the accident. He hadn't witnessed but imagined in terrifying detail. He asked for his father constantly, but slowly they were finding a rhythm together. Every evening after dinner, they visited Elijah at the hospital. Noah would show his father his schoolwork and tell him about his day while Camille watched with a bittersweet ache in her heart. Tonight, as Noah carefully arranged his drawing on Elijah's nightstand, the door opened and a sharp-dressed man in an expensive suit entered. "Who are you and what are you doing here?" he demanded, looking at Camille with suspicious eyes. "I'm Camille Robinson. I'm taking care of Noah while Elijah recovers." She stood protectively near the boy. "I'm Richard, Townsend, Elijah's attorney and the executor of his estate." His eyes narrowed. "And I don't recall any Camille Robinson in his life or legal documents." Ms. Blackwell from Child Services approved the arrangement. "Did she?" He pulled out his phone. "Well, I'll certainly be looking into that. In the meantime, I should inform you that Mr. Carter's business partners and I have been discussing more suitable arrangements for Noah's care." "More suitable? Noah is doing well. He's stable and happy. With a complete stranger? A woman who appears out of nowhere claiming to know Elijah?" Richard's voice dripped with suspicion. "For all we know, you could be after his money." Noah, sensing the tension, moved closer to Camille and took her hand. "I don't want your boss's money, Mr. Townsend," Camille said firmly. "I just want to help his son through a difficult time." A touching story. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "But as the person responsible for protecting Elijah's interests, I'll need more than your word. Expect a call from my office tomorrow." After he left, Noah looked up at Camille with worried eyes. "Does this mean I have to go away again?" Camille knelt and hugged him tight. "No, sweetheart. I promised I'd take care of you until your daddy wakes up, and I keep my promises." But as she held him, Camille couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was coming. Richard Townsend clearly saw her as a threat, and men like him had power and resources she couldn't match. Later that night, after tucking Noah into bed, Camille sat by Elijah's hospital bed alone. "Your lawyer thinks I'm trying to steal your fortune," she said softly, taking his hand. "But I'm just trying to give your son what he needs right now, stability and love." She sighed. "You need to wake up, Elijah. Noah needs you. And apparently, I need you to tell your sharks to back off." As she spoke, she felt the slightest pressure against her fingers. Startled, she looked down at their joined hands. "Elijah?" His eyelids fluttered almost imperceptibly. "Elijah, can you hear me?" Her heart raced as she pressed the call button for the nurse. For a brief, electric moment, his fingers definitely squeezed hers. Then, nothing. The doctor, who examined him, tempered her excitement. "It's a good sign, but not uncommon in coma patients. These reflexes don't necessarily indicate consciousness." But Camille knew what she had felt. Somewhere inside, Elijah was still there, and somehow she was reaching him. As she left the hospital that night, she felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. Hope that Elijah might be finding his way back, and fear of what would happen when he did. Would he be grateful for her care of Noah, or would he side with Richard and see her as an intruder? More importantly, what would happen to her heart, which was already becoming dangerously attached to both the father in the hospital bed and his sweet, vulnerable son? 2 months had passed since Camille first took Noah home. Fall had given way, to winter, and Christmas decorations brightened the windows of her small apartment. Noah sat at the kitchen table, his tongue poking out in concentration as he wrote a letter to Santa. "Do you think Santa can bring a present to Daddy in the hospital?" he asked, looking up from his paper. Camille set down the cookie dough she was mixing. "I'm sure Santa can visit your daddy too. I'm asking him to make Daddy wake up." Noah's small face was serious. "That's all I want for Christmas." Camille's heart squeezed. Noah had adjusted to living with her better than anyone expected, but he still asked about his father every day. She crossed the room and gave him a gentle hug. "That's a wonderful wish, sweetie." The doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Camille opened it to find Ms. Blackwell from Child Services standing there with a serious expression. "May I come in? We need to talk." After Noah was settled in the living room with a Christmas movie, the two women spoke in hushed tones in the kitchen. "There's been a petition filed to transfer Noah's guardianship," Ms. Blackwell explained. "Mr. Townsend and the board of Carter Enterprises are claiming that as Elijah's business associates, they should determine who cares for his son." "They can't do that," Camille protested. "Noah is thriving here. His teachers say he's doing well in school, and his nightmares have almost stopped." "I'm on your side, Camille. I've seen the progress Noah has made with you, but Richard Townsend has a lot of influence. He's suggesting that you're an opportunist trying to get access to the Carter fortune through Noah." Camille felt anger rising in her chest. "I haven't asked for a penny of Elijah's money. I've been using my own savings, which is exactly what I told the judge. For now, the temporary guardianship remains in place, but there will be a hearing after the holidays." Ms. Blackwell lowered her voice further. "And there's something else. They're bringing in a specialist to evaluate Elijah's condition. There's talk about moving him to a long-term care facility." The thought of Elijah being moved away sent a wave of panic through Camille. "But his doctor said he's showing small signs of improvement. Just last week, his hand moved when Noah was reading to him. They're saying those are just reflexes." Mr. Townsend mentioned that the company needs to make decisions about leadership, and having Elijah in this uncertain state is causing problems. After Ms. Blackwell left, Camille stood by the window watching snow begin to fall. What was Richard Townsend really after? Was this about Noah's welfare, or was something else going on at Carter Enterprises? The hospital corridor was quiet as Camille made her way to Elijah's room that evening. Noah walked beside her, carrying a small Christmas tree they had decorated for his father's room. When they reached the door, Camille was surprised to find it open, voices coming from inside. She paused, holding Noah back. "The board is getting restless, Elijah," Richard Townsend was saying to the unconscious man. "We need to move forward with the Westview project, but we can't without your signature or power of attorney." "If you'd just signed those papers before the accident," another man in the room sighed heavily. "The doctors aren't optimistic about recovery. Maybe it's time to consider activating the succession plan." "James has a point," said a woman's voice. "If we wait much longer, we could lose everything you've built." "Let's give it until after the new year," Richard replied. "If there's no change by then, we'll proceed with the recommendation for long-term care and petition the court for operational control of the company." Noah tugged at Camille's hand. "Why are they talking about Daddy like he's not there?" The voices inside went silent. A moment later, Richard appeared at the door, his surprise quickly masked by a tight smile. "Ms. Robinson, we were just discussing Mr. Carter's care options." "So I heard," Camille replied, keeping her voice calm for Noah's sake. "Noah wanted to bring his father a Christmas tree." Richard stepped aside, and Noah rushed to his father's bedside, carefully placing the small tree on the nightstand. "Look, Daddy, we decorated it ourselves. Camille says you can still see the lights even if your eyes are closed." The others in the room, a stern-looking man and a stylish woman in her 50s, exchanged uncomfortable glances. The woman approached Noah with a practiced smile. "You must be Noah. I'm Victoria Maxwell, your father's CFO. Your daddy and I have worked together for many years." Noah nodded politely, but stayed close to his father's bed. Richard cleared his throat. "We should continue our discussion later. Ms. Robinson, I'll have my assistant call you about the court date in January." After they left, Noah climbed carefully onto the chair beside Elijah's bed and began telling him about school and the Christmas play he was in. Camille watched them, worry gnawing at her. Something about the conversation she'd overheard felt wrong. Why were they so eager to move Elijah to long-term care when his regular doctor still saw hopeful signs? Later, when Noah went to get a hot chocolate from the vending machine with a nurse, Camille sat beside Elijah and took his hand. "I don't trust them, Elijah," she whispered. "I think there's something they're not telling us about the company. But I promise you, I won't let them push you aside or take Noah." She glanced at the door to make sure they were alone before continuing. "I know it's been 20 years, and you probably never think about me anymore, but I never forgot the boy who promised to come back for me. The boy who knew all my dreams and secrets," her voice caught. "I thought I was over you. I'd convinced myself of that. But seeing you again, taking care of Noah, those feelings never really went away. And now I'm fighting for both of you without even knowing if you'd want me to." She wiped away a tear. "Please, Elijah, give me a sign that you can hear me, that I'm doing the right thing." She waited, watching his face for any flicker of movement. The minutes ticked by in silence. Then, just as she was about to give up, his index finger moved, tapping twice against her palm. Camille gasped. "Elijah, can you hear me? Tap once for yes." His finger moved again, a single, deliberate tap, "Doctor." Peterson frowned as he reviewed Elijah's latest tests. "There's definitely increased brain activity, but I can't promise it means what you think it does, Ms. Robinson." "He responded to my questions," Camille insisted. "It wasn't random. I asked him to tap once for yes, and he did, consistently. The human brain is complex. Sometimes these movements seem purposeful but aren't. Then do more tests, please." Camille wasn't giving up. What if Elijah is trapped in there, aware of everything but unable to communicate except through these small movements? "It's possible," Dr. Peterson conceded. "Rare but not unheard of. I'll order a more comprehensive neurological evaluation." When Richard Townsend heard about the new tests, he arrived at the hospital looking agitated. "This is a waste of resources," he argued with Dr. Peterson, while Camille listened from the hallway. Dr. Morris, the specialist we consulted, already concluded that Elijah's condition is unlikely to change. "With all due respect, Mr. Townsend, as Mr. Carter's physician, I'm obligated to investigate any sign of improvement." "And who reported this supposed improvement? A woman who appeared out of nowhere claiming to be an old friend?" Dr. Peterson's voice hardened. "I've been treating Mr. Carter since he arrived, and I've observed these changes myself over the past a week." Richard left looking frustrated, brushing past Camille without acknowledgement. She found his reaction troubling. Shouldn't Elijah's attorney be thrilled at any sign of improvement? Christmas Eve arrived with a fresh blanket of snow. Camille's apartment was warm and festive, the small tree twinkling with colored lights. She had invited several of Noah's friends from school for cookies and hot chocolate, wanting to make the holiday special for him despite the circumstances. As the last guest departed, Noah helped Camille clean up, carefully putting leftover cookies on a plate. "These are for Daddy," he explained. "Can we visit him tonight?" "Of course we can, sweetie." Noah smiled but then grew serious. "Camille, if Daddy wakes up, will I still live with you?" The question caught her off guard. "Well, your daddy would want you to live with him once he's better. But what if I want to live with both of you?" Noah's eyes were wide and hopeful. "Tommy from school has 2 houses. He lives with his mom sometimes and his dad other times." Camille knelt to Noah's level. "It's a bit different, sweetheart. Your daddy and I aren't like Tommy's parents. But you love Daddy, don't you? I heard you telling him at the hospital." Heat rushed to Camille's cheeks. She hadn't realized Noah had overheard her private words to Elijah. "I care about your daddy very much. We were good friends a long time ago. And Daddy cares about you too. That's why he squeezes your hand." Camille didn't know how to respond. Instead, she hugged Noah tight, her heart full of complicated emotions. The hospital was quiet on Christmas Eve, the halls decorated with garlands and lights. When Camille and Noah arrived at Elijah's room, they found Dr. Peterson waiting for them with an excited expression. "I was about to call you," he said. The new tests showed significantly increased brain activity. "Elijah is definitely responding to external stimuli, especially voices." "So he can hear us?" Noah asked, his face lighting up. "Yes, son, I believe he can." Noah rushed to his father's side. "Daddy, it's me, Noah. It's Christmas Eve, and I brought your cookies." Camille stood back, watching as Noah chatted excitedly to his father. Dr. Peterson moved beside her. "There's more," he said quietly. "We did some tests specifically measuring his responses to different voices. He shows the strongest reactions to 2 voices." "Noah's," Camille guessed. "Yes, and yours, Miss Robinson." The revelation sent a flutter through Camille's chest. "Mine? His brain activity spikes significantly when you speak. Whatever connection you shared in the past, his brain still recognizes your voice on some level." After Dr. Peterson left, Camille sat on the edge of Elijah's bed, watching as Noah carefully arranged cookies on a napkin beside the little Christmas tree. "Look, Daddy, I saved the star cookies for you because stars are special, like when you wish on them." As Noah spoke, Elijah's fingers twitched slightly. The boy gasped. "He moved." Daddy moved his hand. Camille smiled. "He's listening to you, Noah." I read him the night before Christmas. I practiced at school. That's a wonderful idea." As Noah began reading from the book Camille had brought, she noticed Elijah's heart rate on the monitor, steady but slightly elevated, as if he was focusing on his son's words. Later, when Noah fell asleep in the chair, Camille gently covered him with her coat and moved closer to Elijah. "Merry Christmas, Elijah," she whispered. "Your son is amazing. You should be so proud of him." She watched his face, looking for any sign of response. "I spoke with Dr. Peterson about the tests. He says you can hear me, that you respond to my voice." She took a shaky breath. "I hope that's true, because there's something you need to know. Richard Townsend and your board members are planning something. I overheard them talking about a succession plan and getting control of the company." Elijah's heart monitor beeped a little faster. "I don't know what it means, but I don't trust them, especially Richard. He's been trying to get guardianship of Noah and move you to a facility where you'd have fewer visitors." She hesitated, then added softly, "I know I have no right to interfere in your business affairs. We've been apart for 20 years. You built a life, a family, a company without me. But Noah needs you, and if there's any chance you're fighting to come back to him, I want you to know you're not alone in that fight." In the dimly lit room, with Christmas lights twinkling and snow falling softly outside the window, Camille felt a strange sense of peace despite all the uncertainty. Whatever happened next, whatever battles lay ahead with Richard Townsend and the board, she knew she was exactly where she needed to be. The week after Christmas brought a mix of hope and new challenges. Dr. Peterson had ordered additional tests that showed Elijah was making progress, however small. He was now occasionally able to move his fingers on command and seemed to track movement with his eyes, though he couldn't open them fully or speak. Richard Townsend, however, remained skeptical. He had brought in another specialist who was less optimistic about Elijah's chances for meaningful recovery. "Dr. Morris believes these responses could be misleading," Richard explained to Camille after one of his visits. "He suggests we need to be realistic about Elijah's future." "Realistic? You mean giving up on him?" Richard's expression hardened. "I mean making decisions that protect his legacy and his son. Carter Enterprises employs thousands of people. The company can't remain in limbo indefinitely. And Noah, is he just part of the legacy you're so concerned about? Noah needs stability and resources that only Carter Enterprises can provide. While your attachment to the boy is touching, the court will need to consider his long-term welfare." After Richard left, Camille sat beside Elijah, her mind racing. "I need to understand what's happening with your company," she told him. "What is Richard so eager to control?" She remembered the name they'd mentioned, the Westview Project. That evening, after putting Noah to bed, she searched online for information. Carter Enterprises had recently announced a major development called Westview Gardens, a luxury residential community on valuable waterfront property. According to financial news sites, it was set to be the company's most profitable venture yet, but construction had stalled since Elijah's accident. The next day, Camille dropped Noah off at a friend's house for a playdate, then drove to the Carter Enterprises headquarters. The gleaming skyscraper in the heart of downtown reflected Elijah's success, a far cry from the humble beginnings they'd shared in Pine Grove. At the reception desk, she asked to speak with Victoria Maxwell, the CFO she'd met at the hospital. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked. "No, but it's regarding Elijah Carter's son, Noah. I'm his guardian." After a 15-minute wait, Victoria appeared, looking polished but wary. "Ms. Robinson, this is unexpected. I apologize for coming unannounced, but I'm concerned about some things I've overheard regarding Elijah's company and how they might affect Noah's future." Victoria led her to a small conference room. "What exactly are your concerns?" Camille chose her words carefully. "I understand there's pressure to move forward with the Westview project. Richard mentioned something about needing Elijah's signature or power of attorney." Victoria's expression became guarded. "Company matters are confidential, Ms. Robinson. I'm not interested in company secrets. I just want to understand why Richard seems so eager to have Elijah declared permanently incapacitated when his doctors see improvement." Victoria was silent for a long moment, studying Camille's face. Finally, she sighed. "The Westview development is unlike anything we've done before. Elijah was personally overseeing every aspect. The land was purchased from the city with certain conditions, specifically that development begin by March of this year, or ownership reverts to the city. That's only 2 months away. Yes. Without Elijah's signature, we can't proceed with construction. If we lose that land, the company takes a major financial hit. Some board members might not survive it, including Richard." Victoria's slight nod told Camille everything. "Richard convinced several investors to put substantial funds into Westview. If it falls through, the pieces were starting to fit together. Richard wasn't just protecting Elijah's legacy, he was protecting himself." As Camille prepared to leave, Victoria stopped her at the door. "Ms. Robinson, for what it's worth, Noah seems happy with you. Happier than I've seen him since Diana passed." Camille smiled. "Thank you for saying that. And there's something else you should know. Elijah changed his will after Diana died. He never filed it officially. The accident happened before he could, but he told me about it. He was worried about Noah growing up with all that money and no guidance. What did the new will say? I don't know the details, but he mentioned wanting someone who knew the value of things beyond money to help raise Noah if anything happened to him." Victoria gave Camille a meaningful look. "Maybe that person was you." That night, Camille sat by Elijah's bed while Noah was in the hospital cafeteria with a nurse who had grown fond of him. "I spoke with Victoria today," she told Elijah. "I think I understand what Richard is after now. The Westview project needs your approval to move forward, and time is running out." She took his hand, running her thumb across his knuckles. "If you could just wake up, even for a little while, you could stop whatever he's planning." Elijah's fingers curled slightly around hers, the clearest response he'd given yet. "You're fighting, aren't you? I can feel it." She squeezed his hand. "Keep fighting, Elijah. Noah and I are waiting for you." Without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. As she pulled back, his eyelids fluttered. Camille's heart raced. "Elijah." His eyes opened just a crack, unfocused at first, then slowly finding her face. His lips moved, but no sound came out. "Don't try to talk," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Just rest, I'm going to get the doctor." As she turned to leave, his fingers tightened around hers with surprising strength. When she looked back, his eyes were fully open, his gaze locked on her face, and in a raspy whisper that she had to lean close to hear, he said a single word. "Camille. Daddy's awake. Daddy's awake." Noah's excited voice echoed through the hospital corridor as he raced toward Elijah's room, Camille hurrying behind him. It had been 3 days since Elijah had opened his eyes and spoken her name, and his progress since then had amazed his doctors. When they entered the room, Elijah was sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. His face lit up when he saw Noah, opening his arms as the boy launched himself carefully onto the bed. "Hey, buddy," Elijah said, his voice still raspy from disuse. "I missed you." I missed you too, Daddy. I knew you would wake up. I asked Santa for it. Elijah hugged his son close, his eyes meeting Camille's over Noah's head. There was something in his gaze that made her heart flutter, recognition, warmth, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. Noah, why don't you show your dad the drawing you made for him? Camille suggested. As Noah eagerly dug through his backpack, Elijah mouthed, "Thank you" to Camille. She nodded, fighting back tears of relief. The next hour passed in a blur of happy chatter as Noah caught his father up on everything he'd missed: school, new friends, Christmas, and all the things he and Camille had done together. Elijah listened, intently, asking questions and smiling at his son's enthusiasm. Eventually, a nurse came to take Noah to the cafeteria for lunch, leaving Camille and Elijah alone for the first time since he'd awakened. "The doctors told me what you did," Elijah said, his voice stronger now. "How you came as soon as you heard about the accident, how you took Noah when he had nowhere to go." Camille moved closer to his bed. "I couldn't bear the thought of him being alone, not when I could help." After 20 years of silence between us, his eyes searched her face. "Why, Camille?" She looked down at her hands. "Because it was the right thing to do. Because Noah needed someone. And because..." "Because?" She met his gaze. "Because even after all this time, I still care what happens. To you, Elijah Carter." A moment of charged silence passed between them, years of unspoken words hanging in the air. "I remember your voice," he said finally. "When I was in the darkness, I heard you talking to me. About Noah, about Pine Grove, about Richard and the company. You heard all that?" He nodded. "Not everything, it came and went. But your voice was like a lifeline, pulling me back." He reached for her hand and she let him take it. "The doctors say I might not have made it back without you and Noah." "You would have found your way," Camille said softly. "You're too stubborn not to." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, that same half-smile she remembered from their youth. "Some things never change, huh?" Before she could respond, the door opened and Richard Townsend walked in, stopping short when he saw them holding hands. "Elijah, thank God you're awake." His surprise quickly shifted to a practiced smile. "We've all been so worried." Elijah's expression cooled. "Richard, I hear you've been busy in my absence." Richard glanced at Camille, then back to Elijah. "Just keeping things running, as you would expect. There's so much we need to discuss about the company, about Westview." "Not now." Elijah's tone left no room for argument. "My priority is Noah. Everything else can wait." "Of course," Richard said smoothly. "Family first. Always. But perhaps Ms. Robinson could give us a moment to discuss a few urgent matters." Camille began to stand, but Elijah kept hold of her hand. "Anything you need to say to me, you can say in front of Camille." Richard's jaw tightened. "Very well. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss the Westview project. Without your signature on the final permits, we'll miss our deadline with the city." "I'm aware of the deadline." "Then you understand the urgency. If we lose that property..." Elijah interrupted, "the company will survive. It might not be good for your personal investments, Richard, but Carter Enterprises has weathered worse." Richard's face flushed. "This isn't about my investments. It's about your legacy, Elijah, everything you've built." "My legacy is sitting in the cafeteria having lunch," Elijah said firmly. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I need to rest before he returns." After Richard left, bristling with barely contained frustration, Camille looked at Elijah with new respect. "You've changed." "Have I?" The Elijah I remember would have been all about the business, the deal, the next big project. He was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. "Nearly dying has a way of clarifying what matters." He squeezed her hand. "So does losing the mother of your child and watching your son grieve." "Diana," Camille said softly. "Noah talks about her. Sometimes she sounds like she was a wonderful mother." She was. His voice held a mix of sadness and fondness. "We had our struggles, especially toward the end. My work always came first, even when she was sick. That's one of my biggest regrets." Camille felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry. Before the accident, I was trying to change, to be more present for Noah. Diana made me promise I would." He looked up at Camille. Then the accident happened and you came back into my life like some kind of miracle. The door opened again before she could respond, and Noah bounded in, full of energy and stories about his lunch adventure. 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of doctor visits, physical therapy sessions, and steady improvement. Elijah grew stronger each day, his determination to recover fully evident in the way he pushed himself during therapy. Camille and Noah continued their daily visits, establishing a new routine that felt strangely natural, as if they had always been a family. Camille thought one evening, as she watched Elijah and Noah playing a board game in the hospital room. She knew it couldn't last. With Elijah awake and recovering, her role as Noah's guardian would soon come to an end. She tried to prepare herself for the inevitable goodbye, telling herself that seeing Elijah and Noah reunited was reward enough, but her heart wasn't listening to her logical arguments. Every smile Elijah sent her way, every brush of their hands as they passed Noah's schoolwork between them, every late-night conversation after Noah had fallen asleep in the chair, all of it was making it harder to imagine walking away. "Penny, for your thoughts," Elijah said, breaking into her reverie. Noah had finally dozed off after an exciting game of Monopoly where he'd managed to bankrupt his father. "Just thinking about how well you're doing," she replied. "Dr. Peterson says you might be able to go home next week." "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." Elijah's expression grew serious. "Noah and I have been talking, and we have a proposition for you." Camille's heart skipped. "Oh? We'd like you to come stay with us when I'm discharged. The house is big enough and I'll still need help with some things. Plus, it would make the transition easier for Noah." "Elijah, It wouldn't be permanent," he added quickly. "Just until I'm fully back on my feet. I know you have your job in Pine Grove to get back to." The thought of her empty apartment in Pine Grove no longer held the appeal it once did. These past months with Noah, and now with Elijah awake, had filled a void in her life she hadn't even realized was there. "I do have some leave time saved up," she said slowly. "My principal has been very understanding about the situation. So that's a yes?" His hopeful expression reminded her so much of Noah that she had to smile. "Yes, but just until you're fully recovered." The relief in his eyes was palpable. "Thank you, Camille, for everything." As Noah stirred in his sleep, mumbling something about hotels on Boardwalk, Camille wondered what she was getting herself into. Moving into Elijah's house, becoming even more attached to both him and Noah, it was a recipe for heartbreak when the time came to leave. But looking at the two of them, she couldn't bring herself to say no. Not yet. Richard Townsend was not happy about the arrangement. "You hardly know this woman, Elijah," he argued during one of his hospital visits, "and now you're inviting her to live in your home, with access to your personal papers, your accounts." "I've known Camille since we were children," Elijah countered calmly, "and she's taken excellent care of my son for months without asking for anything in return. I trust her completely." Richard's eyes narrowed. "People change in 20 years. The girl you knew in Pine Grove might not be the same woman who showed up so conveniently when you were vulnerable." "Careful, Richard." Elijah's voice took on a dangerous edge. "You're talking about someone who has earned my gratitude and respect. I'm just looking out for your interests, as I always have." "Are you?" Elijah held his gaze. "Because, from what I've pieced together about the Westview project, it seems like you've been looking out for your own interests quite effectively." Richard stiffened. "Any investments I made were above board and with full disclosure to the board. We'll see about that. I've asked Victoria to prepare a complete accounting of all personal investments by board members in company projects." Elijah smiled thinly. "Just to be thorough, you understand." After Richard stormed out, Elijah sank back against his pillows, looking tired but satisfied. "How you enjoyed that, didn't you?" Camille asked from the doorway where she'd been standing unnoticed. "More than I probably should have." He gestured for her to come in. "Richard's been trying to push me out of major decisions since I founded the company. The accident just gave him the opportunity he's been waiting for. Victoria told me a little about it. The Westview land reverts to the city if construction doesn't start by March." Elijah nodded. "Which is why Richard has been so desperate to either get my signature or have me declared incompetent, so the board could proceed without me." "What will happen now?" Now I sign the permits and construction begins." He reached for the water glass on his nightstand, wincing slightly. His right side was still weaker than his left. But on my terms, not Richard's. The original plan included affordable housing units and green space. Richard wanted to eliminate those to maximize profits. Camille helped him with the water. "You really have changed. For the better, I hope." Their eyes met, and for a moment Camille felt like the girl from Pine Grove again, looking into the eyes of the boy who had captured her heart so completely. The spell was broken by her cell phone, ringing. It was Noah's school. He had a fever and needed to be picked up. Elijah's sprawling lakeside mansion took Camille's breath away. She had seen photos of it in magazines, but nothing prepared her for the reality of the soaring ceilings, wall-to-wall, windows overlooking the water, and elegant furnishings. "This is where you live?" she asked Noah as he eagerly gave her the tour. "Uh-huh. And now you live here too?" He pulled her toward a hallway off the main living area. "Daddy said you get the blue room. It's next to mine." The blue room turned out to be a spacious guest suite with its own bathroom and sitting area, decorated in soothing shades of blue and cream. French doors opened onto a small private balcony with a view of the lake. "This is bigger than my entire apartment," Camille murmured, setting down her small suitcase. "Do you like it?" Elijah asked from the doorway, leaning on his cane. The doctors had released him that morning with strict instructions to continue his physical therapy and rest. "It's beautiful," she admitted, "but a bit intimidating." "It's just a house," he said with a shrug. "Too big for just Noah and me, honestly. Diana loved it, though. She had the whole place decorated." Camille could sense his discomfort talking about his late wife. She had excellent taste. The best, he agreed, then changed the subject. "Mrs. Patel, our housekeeper, has prepared lunch if you're hungry, and Noah wants to show you the rest of the property after we eat." The days that followed established a new routine. Mornings were for Elijah's therapy and Noah's schoolwork. Afternoons often found them all together in the sunroom or by the lake, depending on the weather. Evenings were for family dinners and games or movies with Noah before bed. Camille found herself settling into the rhythm of their lives with surprising ease. Mrs. Patel, who came in daily to clean and cook, clearly approved of her presence, often commenting on how much happier the young master seemed with her there. But beneath the surface of their comfortable arrangement, tensions and unspoken feelings simmered. Camille caught Elijah watching her sometimes, with an expression that made her wonder what he was thinking, and the simple domestic moments they shared, helping Noah with homework, discussing his day at school, planning weekend activities, felt dangerously like the family life she had once dreamed of having with Elijah. 2 weeks after moving into the Carter home, Camille was reading in the den when Elijah joined her, moving more steadily now with a, "Kane, Noah's finally asleep," he said, lowering himself carefully into the chair across from her. "He insisted on 3 bedtime stories tonight," Camille smiled. "He's testing boundaries a bit. It's normal after so much change. You're good with him. Better than I ever was." "That's not true. You're a wonderful father, Elijah. Noah adores you." He looked down at his hands. "Before the accident, I was rarely home before his bedtime. I told myself I was building a secure future for him, but the truth is, I was running from my grief over Diana, from my guilt about not being there enough during her illness." "You can't change the past," Camille said gently, "but you're here for him now, thanks to you." He met her eyes. "You know, I never thought I'd see you again after I left Pine Grove." The shift in conversation sent a flutter through her chest. "I never expected to see you again either, especially not like this. I often wondered what happened to you. If you were happy." "I made a good life," she said. "I loved teaching. My students, my friends, my little apartment. It's enough." "Is it?" The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Before she could answer, his phone rang. He checked the screen and frowned. "It's Richard. I should take this." He stood, moving toward the door. "We're not done with this conversation, Camille." After he left, she sat alone in the quiet den, her book forgotten. What was happening between them? Was she imagining the rekindling of feelings, or was Elijah feeling it too? And even if he was, what future could they possibly have? She belonged in Pine Grove in her classroom with her students. His life was here, running his company, raising Noah in this lakeside mansion. Their worlds had been too different 20 years ago. They were even more different now. The Westview permits were signed, construction had begun, and Richard Townsend had been noticeably absent from the Carter home in recent weeks. According to Victoria, who had become a regular visitor and unexpected ally, he was licking his wounds after Elijah's review of the project had uncovered some questionable financial arrangements. The board voted to remove him as lead counsel for the company. Victoria told Camille one afternoon when she'd stopped by to drop off some papers for Elijah. Not that Richard's going quietly, of course. What do you mean? Victoria lowered her voice, glancing toward the Home Office where Elijah was on a conference call. Just that he's been making some noise about Elijah's fitness to lead, suggesting the coma might have affected his judgment. That's ridiculous. Elijah's doctors have cleared him completely. I know that, and the board knows that, but Richard is desperate. He leveraged himself deeply on Westview, and Elijah's changes to the project mean lower returns for investors. The conversation left Camille uneasy. Richard had seemed the type to hold grudges, and his absence didn't mean he'd given up. That evening, after dinner, Elijah suggested they take a walk by the lake. Noah was having a sleepover at a friend's house, leaving them alone for the first time in weeks. The February air was crisp but not unbearable, and the setting sun cast golden light across the frozen lake. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, Elijah moving more steadily now with just a walking stick for support. "I had a call from your principal today," he said finally. "Dr. Adams wanted to know when you'd be returning to Pine Grove." Camille's heart sank. She'd been avoiding thinking about her inevitable return, extending her leave of absence as long as possible. "What did you tell him? That you were still needed here?" Elijah stopped walking, turning to face her. "But that's not fair to you or your students. You have a life to get back to." "I know." She looked out across the lake, unable to meet his eyes. "Noah's doing well, and you're almost fully recovered. There's no reason for me to stay much longer. Isn't there?" She turned back to him, her pulse quickening at his intent expression. "Camille, these past weeks with you here, with the three of us together, it's felt right in a way nothing has since Diana died. Before that even. Elijah, let me finish, please." He took her hands in his. 20 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left Pine Grove without you. I told myself I was doing it for your sake, that you deserved better than being dragged along on my ambitious journey, that I needed to make something of myself first. You did make something of yourself. Yes, but at what cost? I lost you. And then I lost myself in work, in success, in a marriage that was more about appropriate corporate image than true partnership. He squeezed her hands. Diana and I cared for each other, but we were never in love. Not the way you and I were. She knew it, and in the end she made me promise that if I ever found real love again, I wouldn't let it go. Camille's eyes filled with tears. "What are you saying, Elijah?" "I'm saying I never stopped loving you, Camille Robinson. Not really. I buried those feelings, convinced myself they were just youthful infatuation. But having you here, seeing you, with Noah, remembering the man I used to be when I was with you, I can't let you walk away again. Our lives are so different," she whispered. "Your world is here. Mine is in Pine Grove. Worlds can change. Companies can be run from anywhere. Schools need teachers everywhere." He stepped closer. "The question is, do you feel anything for me? Or am I just a shadow from your past?" Camille's heart pounded. Did she dare believe this was real? That after 20 years they could pick up where they left off and build something new? "I never stopped loving you either," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I tried. I dated other men, built a life I'm proud of, but no one ever made me feel the way you did." Elijah's face lit up with a joy so pure it took her breath away. Slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, he leaned down and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, like a question. Then, as she responded, it deepened into something more certain, a promise, a homecoming. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard, their foreheads resting against each other. "Stay," he whispered. Not just as Noah's caretaker or my nurse. Stay because you want to build a life with us." Before she could answer, the sound of a car approaching broke the moment. They turned to see Richard's sleek black sedan pulling into the driveway. "What is he doing here?" Camille wondered aloud. Elijah's expression darkened. "Let's find out." They walked back to the house, hand in hand, to find Richard waiting on the front porch with a manila envelope. Elijah. Ms. Robinson. His tone was coldly professional, but his eyes narrowed at their joined hands. "I apologize for coming unannounced, but this matter couldn't wait." "What matter?" Elijah asked. Richard held out the envelope. "The board has called an emergency meeting for Monday morning. These are the details." "You could have emailed this," Elijah said, not taking the envelope. "I wanted to deliver it personally, given the serious nature of the allegations." "Allegations?" Camille felt Elijah's hand tighten around hers. Richard smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yes. Concerns have been raised about your cognitive fitness to lead the company, Elijah, and about the undue influence of certain parties on your decision-making." His gaze shifted pointedly to Camille. "If this is about the changes to Westview, the board already approved them," Elijah said, his voice dangerously calm. "This goes beyond Westview. It's about the pattern of erratic decisions since your accident, and about the suspicious timing of Ms. Robinson's appearance in your life." Richard placed the envelope on the porch railing. "Monday, 9 a.m. I suggest you come prepared." After he drove away, Elijah picked up the envelope and tore it open, his face growing grimmer as he read the contents. "He's trying to force a vote of no confidence," he said finally, "using my medical condition as the excuse." "Can he do that?" Camille asked. "He can try." Elijah's jaw was set in a determined line. "But Richard has always underestimated me, and now he's underestimating you too." He pulled her close, his eyes fierce with a protective fire that made her heart swell. "Whatever he's planning, we'll face it together," he promised. "If you'll stay." Standing there in his arms, with the sun setting behind them and the future uncertain, Camille knew there was only one answer she could give. "I'll stay." The weekend passed in a whirlwind of preparation for Monday's board meeting. Elijah spent hours on the phone with Victoria and other allies on the board, while Camille tried to keep Noah distracted and shielded from the tension. "Is something wrong with Daddy?" Noah asked Sunday afternoon as they baked cookies in the kitchen. "He looks worried, like my friend Tommy when he thinks he's in trouble." Camille smiled reassuringly. "Your daddy just has an important meeting tomorrow, grown-up stuff about his company." "Is it because of Mr. Townsend?" "I don't like him. He never talks to me, only at me." Out of the mouths of babes, Camille thought. "Your daddy and Mr. Townsend have different ideas about the company. That happens sometimes in business." Noah nodded sagely as he pressed a cookie cutter into the dough. "Daddy says you're helping him get ready for the meeting. Are you good at grown-up business stuff too?" "Not really, but sometimes just having someone believe in you makes all the difference." Later that evening, after Noah was in bed, Camille found Elijah in his study, surrounded by financial reports and legal documents. "You should rest," she said, setting a cup of tea beside him. "Tomorrow will be a long day." He rubbed his eyes tiredly. Richard's been planning this for months. These financial discrepancies in the Westview reports didn't happen overnight. Victoria said most of the board still supports you, for now. But Richard can be persuasive, especially when money is involved. He took her hand, pulling her gently onto his lap. "Thank you for staying, for believing in me." "Always," she whispered, resting her head against his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, finding strength in each other's presence. Tomorrow would test them, but tonight they had this, the quiet understanding between two people who had found their way back to each other against all odds. The Carter Enterprises boardroom hummed with tension. Monday morning, 12 board members sat around the massive oak table, with Richard at one end and Elijah at the other. Camille had insisted on coming along for moral support, though she waited outside in the reception area. Victoria took her seat beside Elijah, giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. "Remember, you only need 7 votes to shut this down." Elijah nodded, his face a mask of calm confidence despite the storm brewing inside. In the 3 months since his accident, He had fought his way back from the edge of death, reconnected with his son, and found love with Camille again. He wasn't about to let Richard Townsend take any of that away. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard began, standing to address the room, "thank you for attending this emergency session. I know many of you had to rearrange your schedules, but the matter before us today is of utmost importance to the future of Carter Enterprises." He paused dramatically, looking around the table. "We are all relieved and delighted by Elijah's recovery. The medical miracle of his awakening from the coma brought joy to everyone in this room." Several board members nodded in agreement. "However," Richard continued, his voice taking on a concerned tone, "a medical recovery doesn't necessarily mean a full cognitive recovery. As painful as it is to acknowledge, we must consider the possibility that Elijah's decision-making abilities have been impaired by his traumatic brain injury." "My medical records have been submitted to this board," Elijah interrupted calmly. "My doctors have cleared me completely. Yes, for normal functioning," Richard countered. "But running a multi-million-dollar corporation requires more than normal functioning. It requires exceptional judgment and clarity of thought." He distributed folders to each board member. "The documents before you outline a pattern of concerning decisions since Elijah's return, most notably the costly redesign of the Westview project, which reduced projected profits by nearly 30% to accommodate unnecessary community benefits." Victoria leaned forward. "Those community benefits were part of Elijah's original vision for Westview, as all of you know. The only reason they were removed was because Richard altered the plans while Elijah was incapacitated." Richard's face tightened. "I simplified the project to ensure its financial viability in uncertain times." "You simplified it to maximize your own investment returns," Elijah said, his voice level but firm. "Returns that were based on insider information about the project's timeline." Murmurs rippled around the table as board members exchanged glances. "That's a serious accusation," Richard said, his confidence faltering slightly. "It's not an accusation, it's a fact." Elijah nodded to Victoria, who distributed her own folders. "These documents show that Richard created a separate investment vehicle 2 weeks before my accident. He then encouraged several of you to invest in it, promising exceptional returns on the Westview project." He looked directly at Richard. "What you didn't tell them was that you had already negotiated private deals with contractors that would have cut corners on materials and labor, changes I would never have approved." The room fell silent as board members paged through the documents, faces growing serious. "This is a distraction tactic," Richard said, his voice rising. "We're here to discuss Elijah's fitness to lead, not my investment strategies." "They're directly connected," Elijah replied. "Your motion of no confidence isn't about my health. It's about stopping me from uncovering your ethical violations." An older board member, Harold Jenkins, cleared his throat. "Is this true, Richard? Did you create this investment fund without full disclosure to the board?" Richard adjusted his tie nervously. "The fund was separate from company business, a private opportunity. Based on inside information," Victoria pointed out, "and contingent on changes to the project that would benefit investors at the expense of the company's reputation and long-term interests." The tide was turning. Elijah could feel it in the shifting body language around the table, the thoughtful expressions replacing concerned ones. "There's one more thing," Elijah said, playing his final card. "Something Richard hasn't told you about his motion today." All eyes turned to him. "The terms of my father's trust, which provided the initial funding for Carter Enterprises, include a specific clause about succession. If I'm removed as CEO for any reason other than voluntary retirement or criminal conviction, control of the trust, which still owns 30% of the company, passes not to the board but to my heir." "Noah is 6 years old," Richard scoffed. "He can't run a company." "No, but his guardian can make decisions on his behalf until he comes of age." Elijah smiled. "And his current legal guardian approved by the court is Camille Robinson." Richard's face drained of color. "The school teacher. You can't be serious." "Completely serious. So even if you succeed in removing me today, you won't gain control. You'll just exchange one Carter decision-maker for someone who shares my values completely." Harold Jenkins chuckled. Seems like you've been outmaneuvered, Richard. This is absurd, Richard sputtered. She's not family. She's just some woman from his past who showed up at a convenient moment. Actually, Victoria interjected, the guardianship was formally approved and is legally binding. And as for not being familiar, she glanced at Elijah with a questioning look. He nodded, then addressed the board. Camille has agreed to become my wife. We were planning to announce it next week, but under the circumstances, a ripple of surprised murmurs and a few congratulatory smiles spread around the table. Richard looked stunned. You're marrying her after a few months, when Diana has barely been gone a year. Diana and I had already separated before her diagnosis, Elijah said quietly, revealing something few people knew. We stayed together for Noah and to avoid public spectacle during her illness. She made me promise to find happiness again. He leaned forward, addressing the entire board. I nearly died in that accident. It made me reevaluate everything. What kind of company I want to build, what kind of father I want to be, what kind of legacy I want to leave. The changes I've made since returning aren't signs of impaired judgment. They're signs of clearer priorities. Harold Jenkins nodded. I think we've heard enough. Shall we vote on Richard's motion? The vote was 9-3 against the motion, of no confidence, with Richard and two of his closest allies the only supporters. Before the meeting adjourned, a new motion was raised to investigate Richard's investment activities, passing by the same margin. As the board members filed out, Victoria stayed behind with Elijah. Congratulations, she said with a smile. On all counts, when's the actual wedding? Elijah looked sheepish. I haven't exactly proposed properly yet. That announcement was a strategic move. Victoria laughed. Well, you'd better make it real. Soon, or you'll have more explaining to do. When Elijah emerged from the boardroom, he found Camille pacing nervously in the reception area. What happened? You look pleased, so it must have gone well. He pulled her into a private corner. Richard's motion failed. The board is firmly on our side. Relief washed over her face. Thank goodness. So it's over? Not quite. There's something I need to tell you. He looked uncomfortable. I may have told the board that we're engaged. You what? Her eyes widened. It was a strategic move, to demonstrate that even if I were removed, control would pass to someone aligned with my values. He took both her hands in his. I'm sorry. I should have discussed it with you first. Camille was quiet for a moment, processing this information. So it was just a business tactic. The announcement was tactical. The feeling behind it is completely real. He gazed into her eyes. I love you, Camille. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I was planning to propose properly, with a ring and everything, once this crisis passed. Her expression softened. You're impossible, Elijah Carter. Still making big life decisions without consulting me. Is that a no? She smiled, squeezing his hands. It's a you'd better do this right when we get home. The relief and joy on his face made her heart sing. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Noah was beside himself with excitement when they told him that evening. You're going to be my mom? He asked Camille, his eyes wide with hope. If that's okay with you, she replied carefully. He launched himself into her arms. It's the best thing ever. Now we can be a real family. Over Noah's head, Camille and Elijah exchanged emotional looks. They had both worried about his reaction, knowing how much he still missed Diana. Later, after Noah was in bed, they sat on the porch swing overlooking the lake, wrapped in a blanket against the early March chill. I called my principal today, Camille said, nestled against Elijah's chest. I'm going to finish out the school year in Pine Grove and then transfer to the elementary school here next fall. Are you sure? I know how much your students mean to you. They do. But this feels right. And it's only 30 minutes away. I can visit Pine Grove any time. He kissed the top of her head. What about your apartment? I'll keep it for now, maybe rent it out eventually. She looked up at him. I want to do this right, Elijah. I don't want anyone, especially Noah, to think this is rushed or that I'm trying to replace Diana. Diana would have liked you, he said softly. She was always straightforward. No pretense. Like you. Tell me about her. The real her, not the society. Page version. Elijah was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. She was brilliant at her business, much better than me at negotiating, actually. She could read people instantly, but she was private, didn't like the spotlight that came with our position. He sighed. We got married because it made sense on paper. Two ambitious people, from good families, compatible goals. We respected each other, cared for each other. When Noah came along, we both adored him. But we were never in love. Not the way we were, Camille finished for him. He corrected. The way we are. The next morning, a courier delivered a small package to the house. Inside was a handwritten note from Victoria and a velvet box containing an antique diamond ring. This was my grandmother's, Victoria's note read. Elijah mentioned he hadn't had time to shop. Consider it a loaner until you pick out your own. Welcome to the family, Camille. Elijah and Noah are lucky to have you. When Elijah saw the ring, he laughed, then dropped to one knee in the kitchen while Noah watched, giggling, from behind his cereal bowl. Camille Robinson, will you marry me? For real this time, not just as a business strategy. With tears in her eyes and laughter on her lips, she nodded. Yes, Elijah Carter, I will marry you. Noah cheered, spilling milk across the table in his excitement. Spring arrived, melting the ice on the lake and bringing new beginnings. Camille drove back and forth from Pine Grove during the week, spending weekends at the lake house with Elijah and Noah. News of their engagement had made the local society pages, bringing a flurry of curious calls and invitations. Some questioned the timing, whispering about Camille's motives and background. Others, who knew Elijah well, recognized the joy that had been missing from his life for so long. Richard Townsend had resigned from Carter Enterprises following the board's investigation, though rumors circulated that he was planning to start a rival development firm. Elijah seemed unconcerned, focusing instead on rebuilding his company with more emphasis on sustainable projects and community benefits. The wedding was set for July, after Camille's school year ended. They planned a simple ceremony by the lake, with just close friends and family, a stark contrast to Elijah's first wedding, which had been a lavish society affair. Are you nervous about moving here permanently? Elijah asked one evening as they walked along the lakeshore. Noah ran ahead, skipping stones across the calm water. A little, Camille admitted. It's a big change. Your world is so different from mine. Our world, he corrected gently. And it can be whatever we make it, she smiled. I was thinking, the east wing of the house, the one you never use. What if we turned it into a learning center for kids who need extra help? I could still teach, just in a different way. The excitement in her voice was contagious. I think that's a wonderful idea. Noah could help too. He's so good with younger children. They watched as their son, and he was becoming their son in every way that mattered, attempted to teach. A small frog to jump on command. I never thought I'd have this, Camille said softly. A family, a second chance with you. Neither did I. Elijah wrapped his arm around her waist. When I was in the coma, there was a moment when I could have let go. Everything was dark and quiet and painless. But then I heard your voice calling me back. You heard me? He nodded. You were reading The Little Prince. Your voice was like a lifeline pulling me toward the light. A lump formed in Camille's throat. I wasn't sure you could hear me. I heard you. Not every word, but enough. He turned to face her fully. You saved me, Camille, in more ways than one. We saved each other, she corrected, reaching up to touch his face. And now we have a lifetime to make up for the years we lost. Noah called to them, proudly displaying the frog that had apparently mastered the art of jumping on cue. As they laughed and applauded his achievement, Camille felt a profound sense of rightness wash over her. This was where she belonged, with this man who had been her first love and would now be her last, with this child who had captured her heart from their very first meeting. In this place that had once seemed so foreign but now felt like home. 20 years ago, a boy and a girl from Pine Grove had made promises under an oak tree, dreaming of a future together. Life had taken them on separate journeys, through success and sorrow, joy and pain. But some loves are too strong to be forgotten, too deep to be erased by time or distance. Their story wasn't perfect. There had been mistakes and missed opportunities, regrets and what-ifs. But standing, here now, on the shores of a lake reflecting the sunset's golden glow, with Noah's laughter ringing in the air, none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was that Elijah had awakened from more than just a physical coma. He had awakened to what truly mattered in life: love, family, purpose beyond profit. And Camille had awakened too, from the comfortable but lonely life she had settled for, to the fuller, richer one she had always dreamed of. As Noah ran back to them, Frog carefully cradled in his small hands, Elijah and Camille exchanged a look of pure contentment. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them together. The man who had found his way back from darkness, the woman who had never stopped believing in second chances, and the child who had brought them both back to life. Their past had shaped them, but it didn't define them. Their future was still being written one day at a time. And this chapter, unlike the ones before, they would write together. 2 months later, on a perfect July afternoon, Camille stood in the garden overlooking the lake, white roses in her hands and happy tears in her eyes. Noah, handsome in his little suit, proudly carried the rings to his father, who waited under an arch of flowers with an expression of such joy it took Camille's breath away. "Are you ready?" Ms. Blackwell asked beside her. The social worker who had first brought Noah into her life had become a dear friend, and Camille had asked her to walk her down the aisle. "More than ready," Camille replied, her eyes never leaving Elijah's face. As she walked toward him, toward their future together, Camille thought of all the twists and turns that had led them here. An accident that could have ended everything had instead given them a new beginning. A love that had slept but never died had awakened stronger than ever. When she reached Elijah, he took her hands in his eyes shining with tears of his own. "Welcome home," he whispered, and in those two simple words was the promise of a lifetime. The home they would build together, the love they would share, the family they had become. Noah tugged at their hands, and they both looked down at him, including him in their circle of love. As the ceremony began, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden light over the three of them, a family forged not by blood or circumstance, but by choice and love, and the belief that some bonds are meant to last forever. And in that perfect moment, standing between the man she had always loved and the boy who had claimed her heart, Camille knew that sometimes the longest journeys bring us exactly where we're meant to be. Sometimes love finds a way back home. The end.